All right, yeah, but I'm just gonna have a cat on me. Yeah, hi everyone. We're currently live, and this is Jupiter, um, and I'm Faraz, your host, and I'm coming to you from Trinidad and Tobago in the southeastern Caribbean. So welcome and thank you for tuning in to the sixth episode of Bird is a Word. So this is a very laid back conversation on birds and birding and all sorts of really nice and cool bird-related things from around the world, right? Hi, Federico, watching from Uruguay. Nice to have you here. So Bird is a Word intends to amplify the voices of birders from as many countries as possible. So if you'll ever looked at the graphics for each episode, you'll notice a little map of the world on the lower right. And, we want to hear from as many different places as possible. So if you're not aware of Learn the Birds, it's a very global movement. It started in South Africa last year. And what we want to do at Learn the Birds is to really spread the awareness and knowledge and appreciation of birds. So remember, for each episode of Bird is a Word, while the date is set, the time varies depending on the time zone our guest is in. So make sure you head across to learnthebirds.com and register there, be part of our rapidly growing community. And most importantly, get that Monday Birding newsletter where you'll be notified of all of the wonderful goings on at Learn the Birds. And also be sure to subscribe to this Learn the Birds YouTube channel where you're looking at this right now. And remember, feel free to interact in the chat. All right. Hi, Jean from Rochester, New York. Good morning to you. Today's guest is Georgina Steytler from Albany, Western Australia. So it's currently 8 p.m. where she is. And Georgina, just a little bit about her. She's a nature photographer with a passion for birds, conservation, and ethics. Her interest in photography became a passion actually over 10 years ago when she began volunteer work with BirdLife Western Australia. Since then, she's been working to produce images for use for free by conservation organizations across Australia, as well as teaching the art and ethics of bird photography through workshops, talks, and articles. She's won numerous awards, including winning the 2020 Bird Photographer of the Year Portfolio Prize and the Wildlife Photographer of the Year 2018. That's in the category of Invertebrates Behaviour. So welcome to the show, Georgina. I'm just going to sip a little bit of coffee because I think there you are. There you are. Hi, Georgina.
Hello.
All right. So welcome to the show. And I hope you have a beverage. Yeah, good evening.
It's 8 p.m. here.
There we go. And I hope you have a beverage of choice. I have my cup of coffee.
I have a little tipple.
Nice.
But just to be clear, I am quite talkative without the wine, so I don't want everyone thinking I'm tipsy.
Yeah. No.
Just getting that out there right now.
Yeah. My first question to you is, what was the last bird you saw today? You had a long day, as you said.
Well, that would be a pied grey currawong. We have lots of them around here, and whenever I go out the back door, there's always one sitting on the clothesline or the thing. They're really cool. They make all kinds of weird noises, and the other thing they do is it took me ages. Do you ever see little bits of poo around the house and you wonder what animal did it?
Yeah.
And I'd see these little things like that. And I'm looking at it and I thought, what the heck is that? Because we've got possums and things like that. But I ended up realising it was the regurgitation of the currawongs. And there's a few birds that do it. So they eat things like beetles and stuff, and then they regurgitate all of the shell.
Yeah.
And it's like little pellets that look like just like poo. But if you look at them, they're full of beetles and things like that. It's actually regurgitating. Yeah, it's the birds. It's there's a word for it. So that's pretty cool.
It's like, I think owls do that a lot, right?
Yes, owls do it. Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting.
So it's really interesting. Yeah, I think so.
But on the topic of droppings, you'll have the spider that looks like bird droppings too, right?
Oh, the bird poo spider. I
Yeah.
know. And I found one in my backyard and I kept
Wow.
meaning to photograph him. But when I went back out there, he
Yeah.
disappeared. But so I know they're around where I live and I'm really excited about that too, actually.
Nice, nice,
I
nice.
know.
But yeah, but we're here to talk about birds. So let me
Yeah.
ask you, how did you get interested in birds at all?
Actually, it's really I've always grown up. I grew up on an orchard, so I've always been surrounded by a fruit orchard. So I've always been surrounded by birds. But to be honest, in the old days, all the farmers used to shoot them and things like that. And they were
Mm,
these days, my parents and my brother, who's still running it would never do that. But they definitely,
yeah.
when they were younger, it was definitely a different attitude. We get lots of cockatoos and things. But what actually started me off, I used to be a lawyer. That's my profession. And we went to Peru for a holiday and we went to the
Mm-hmm.
Amazon and we had a guide there. And when we got back, we kept in contact and we decided to sponsor him to come to Australia for 12 months. And he was really, really into birds in the Amazon. He
Yeah.
was a guide. And so he came over. It was quite hard to get him to come over actually because the government didn't trust that this Peruvian was going to go back home.
Yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah.
so cynical.
Yeah,
But
they're very suspicious.
he loved growing up in the Amazon jungle. He just loved it. And I'm going to talk to you about that Burley Capio Collars. I'm terrible at
Yeah.
pronouncing.
I
I don't,
remember the
anyway,
name, but
Collazos. And so I was showing him around birds. I was just taking him around and he'd asked me what all the birds were. And I had
yeah.
no idea.
Oh.
So I'd make things up.
Yeah. So
But
you
he
got an
worked it out.
assignment then.
And then
Yeah.
one day I took him along to this bird walk and I never forget how embarrassed he was because I used to be a lawyer. Right? I think I was still working. And I
Yeah.
had these, those knee-high leather boots with the stiletto heel, like
Yeah.
lace-ups.
Yeah.
And I got out there and we organized to go to this bird walk with these birders.
Did
And
you
we
wear
went to the
those?
wetland and I had a latte, my takeaway latte,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
here. And I step out with these boots and I just remember him looking at me going, "You're not wearing those, are you?" And I'm going, "Yes." And he wouldn't walk near me. And then we went to this group of birders and they're all standing there with their funny little hats and, their little
Yeah.
khaki vests and their binoculars. And then there's me
Yeah.
with my latte in the boots with the stiletto heels. And they're going, "Where's your binoculars?" And I'm like, "We need binoculars,
Why do I have a latte? Why do I need binoculars?
I know. I was just, he was so embarrassed, but it was really funny. And it was on that bird walk that one of them said, "We need help
Yeah.
with doing slideshows. We do presentations to community groups." And it was mostly older people because, they're the ones who are mostly doing the volunteer work. And when I started to prepare these slideshows, we would need to put images into the slideshows. And I learned so much. So I went from once having an argument with my husband that the little pigeons were actually the babies of the bigger pigeons. And he was saying, "No, they're different species." And I'm going, "No, they're babies."
You're right.
Because I thought there was only one species of pigeon in the whole world.
Yeah. It happens.
And then I went on this astronomical learning curve because I would do all these birds of the world, migratory birds of the world, honey eaters of the world. I'd do one on corvids, and then all of the different bush birds in Australia, water birds. So I learned an enormous amount in just a couple of years. And of course, once you get that birding bug, you never go backwards. And of course, to do the slideshows, we needed images, and that would also why I started going out and taking bird photos.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that's a rather long explanation, but anyway.
No, that's it. It's fine. It's fine. But I've also you've also been learning about a lot of the indigenous names for the birds, right?
Yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. And in Australia, it's only been recently that they've even started incorporating Indigenous things into the mainstream birding organisation. And it's always even way back when I first started, I was, this is crazy, because we've got all these Indigenous people out in remote areas, and they have all of this knowledge that we're not utilizing.
Yeah.
When I say we, it's like mostly the white
Correct. Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon Australians.
Yeah.
And so the birders tend to be the white people, and they just weren't even communicating. Do you know, this is fascinating, right? Do you know the banded stilt? It's a beautiful, it's a kind of dumpy looking stilt, but it's really still quite beautiful with white, and it's got rufous coloured chest. And it wasn't until the 1930s that they worked out where they bred. They were breeding. And so if they had asked, and I kept thinking, if they had asked the Aboriginal people, they could have told them. They would have known in the local area, because what happens is they don't breed in conventional areas and conventional springtime. They wait for rain in ephemeral salt lakes. So they're very opportunistic breeders. And then there'll be a salt lake in the desert in Australia that's suddenly filled up with rain, and suddenly you'll get 10,000 stilts breeding in the one place. Yeah, it's incredible. And because white people had never seen it, they'd never bothered to ask the Aboriginal people. It took them something like 80 years to work out where these birds bred. It's crazy. Sorry, that's a long-winded answer too.
No. I appreciate the long-winded answers. That's what we're looking for, actually. Yeah.
You're thinking this is the easiest interview I've ever done.
It is pretty much. Yeah. So like the thing about indigenous names is that like I've always been pretty much really interested in how things have been like before science then, you know, because there would have been names for things even on this side of the world, you know. Of course, there's been a lot of knowledge that has been lost with the colonization and stuff like that on this end as well. So I've noticed that especially recently, you've been putting a lot of the Aboriginal names in your posts and stuff like that. So you know, I'm enjoying it, but I have no connection to the land there or to the birds there. But I'm sure that it's being really well received at home by you.
I actually think it's been way overdue, and there's a few people starting to do it. And the thing is, when I do start looking into it and they have so much knowledge, and they had a real understanding of the birds, the characters and the personalities that we never. We talk about observing in this, but they knew this already. And for instance, in the Noongar culture, and the Noongars are the broad group of Aboriginal people that used to live in southwest Australia where I am, and I think there's 16 different nations that were in this area. So they've all got slightly different accents and not accents but dialects. But they used to call, I think they called the 28 parrot that we have Namaluk or something like that. But it's really fascinating because they'd say that he was if you had a 28 parrot in the campground, it meant everything was good and safe. But if he suddenly took off, that meant there was a danger. So they had all of this knowledge about birds and behaviours, and they knew, for instance, that to find water, you followed the finches and the pigeons in the outback. It's so interesting. And the other thing is, a lot of the names are onomatopoeic. Oh no, don't ask me to spell it.
That's it. Yeah.
I'm very impressed.
I don't know how I made it. Really, I don't know.
And like what I love is zebra finches, and they got this little. My sister reckons they sound like rubber duckies, but the Western Desert people call them nyee nyee, and I thought that's what they sound like. They're nyee nyee, and I thought we missed that, because in a name tells you so much more about the bird than, you know.
Yeah. It's also that, you know, like they've been learning about the forest and learning about the land for thousands of years. And then when Europeans reach in within a matter of maybe a few decades, they're like, oh, we know everything. And this is this and this is that, you know. So I really want the Indigenous knowledge to become a lot more mainstream, like throughout the world. I think we'd be a lot more responsible.
I think so. And one of the projects I would love to do is a book on, there's a region of Western Australia where I combine the natural history with the cultural history. So the Indigenous cultural history. So I'd interpose with the what we call things and the areas with all of the Indigenous names, and also what group, what nation lived there, what language they called that plant in that area, and also the little stories, because I think that it would just enrich our enjoyment as well as giving us some understanding. They had a really good, they call it a connection to country, and we've lost connection to country.
Yeah.
White people have definitely never had it, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem for them too with their young children growing up. They're losing that connection too as they're kind of pushed into this like modern world. It's really important to kind of encourage them as well to reconnect with all of that knowledge that is being lost.
Yeah, completely. Because, you know, even for me here, like we're all displaced people. I have no, you know, I have no like legacy of connection to the land here. Like I'm not here for generations and generations. You know, I'm just a descendant of people who came here to be indentured laborers, right? Who were taken from their home across the world. So, yeah. Anyway, but that's a whole other thing that we'll be.
We can get into politics.
Yeah. So,
No,
so
just
anyway.
great. And there's another thing. We just did a cultural tour of our local area, and it was really fantastic with a Aboriginal man. And one of the things he showed, there was so many cool things. But there's this plant that you have, and the root. They said if you had a bad tooth, they would chew the root of this plant. And so he dug out the bulb. You go and you don't take the whole bulb. You don't kill it. You only have to slice a little bit off.
Yes.
And then you chew it, and it's like garlic, chili, and all of that in one.
Yeah.
And it does numb your gums. It numbed my mouth for the whole day, just a tiny bit. And I can imagine, he said it had an antiseptic quality too. And I can imagine that would have worked. So I was thinking, this is amazing. Like they already had, you know, and I'm thinking if I get a toothache and the pharmacy is not open, I'm going to go out there with my trowel and try and find this bulb.
Yeah, it's probably better for you than what you can get in the pharmacy too.
I think so. There was another one, because my stepson did the same thing. Oh, my kangaroo is about to leap out. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Let's see them.
She's getting out of her pouch. This is Sprout. Yeah. Okay. We haven't talked about birds, though. We should probably
Yeah. Well, let's talk about these guys, because I'm seeing them. And I'm thinking,
okay. So these are Western grey kangaroo joeys. So what we do is I'm a registered wildlife carer with a couple of different wildlife groups. And every year we take usually 2 joeys. We don't like to take many more because it can be a full-on thing because you've got to feed them every 4 hours. So they get 5 feeds a day. You also have to toilet them. Yes. And then you've got to kind of have them with you all the time. I can't leave them alone. If they get out of the pouch and I'm not there, they'll panic. And they make a funny noise. They go, ha, ha, like that. When they're panicking, and, you know, because I'll be sitting here and maybe they'll get out of the pouch over on the other side of the house and I can hear them. This way we can give them a lot of attention. If you think about it, they're with their mum in the wild for up to 18 months. They're in the pouch for a long time. They can be in the pouch for up to 8 months, in and out of the pouch. So it's a big process. And what happens is once they're big enough to survive without being taken by an eagle or a fox, which is usually around 10 kilos, which probably is about 8 or 9 or sometimes 12 months in your care, depending on when you got them. They go into a soft release pen, which is an enclosure in a bush area. They stay in there for a couple of months where they'll have access to food and water, and then they open the gates and they're let into the wild.
Okay. Do they integrate into like another group of kangaroos? What's a group of kangaroos called, by the way? I don't know. A mob. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, these kangaroos, Western grey kangaroos, are the most social of all the kangaroos in Australia.
Yeah.
Some kangaroos, like red kangaroos, I think are more solitary. And we
Yeah.
got Euros, which are a kind of cross between kangaroo and wallaby. They're much more solitary animals. These ones are very affectionate and family oriented. So if you try and have two that you raise together, so at least they've got each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Are
males
these,
are always,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, are
So this
these the
is,
ones that get like huge and really
yeah, they
strong?
do, with big muscles. The red ones get a
Yeah,
bit, actually the greys can get really big too. Really, really big muscles. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
wouldn't think it. This is a boy here. You can't imagine him with, with a six pack.
No, I think they have like a 12 pack or something like that, and biceps and that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
they're the most loving, beautiful animals. And so we do that. And we're also, I'm going to be doing ringtail possums this year. And wait till you see a ringtail possum, you'll
Ooh,
die. They are just
yeah.
beyond beautiful.
Are there any animals that you would like shy away from as a rehabber?
I don't do birds, ironically.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
yeah, because I don't want to put that feeding tube down their mouth. We did
Yeah.
training, but it freaks me out because people put the tubes right down, and I'm
Hmm.
terrified of putting it down the wrong hole and like
Yeah.
killing the poor
Yeah.
thing. You have to be very firm in when you're handling birds and very confident, and I guess
Yeah.
if quite specialized as well, and they're a lot more difficult, I think. And they do tend to die, which is really, really sad, but it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very
that's
hard.
unfortunate and inconvenient that they tend to die sometimes. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I remember the thing about birds is they're very brave. I don't know, brave, but they can look really, really well, and then they suddenly
yeah,
drop dead.
yeah,
They're
overnight,
really good at hiding that they're sick.
100%. And like I handled some birds and stuff like that already. Like I'm not a licensed rehabber or anything like that, but I did do some work with some rehab centers. And that's what I realized, that you have to be really firm with them, but then they're so delicate that you have to be firm but soft at the same time.
Yes, you got to know how to
Um,
hold them properly. Like if it, and especially parrots, because they can bite. So you have
yeah,
to know how to hold that head quite firmly so they don't move or hurt themselves, but at the same time, not so that you're hurting them.
yeah,
Yeah, and if you're not experienced in it, it can be quite intimidating. Plus, I don't like if I had an owl, I don't think I want to be feeding it dead mice.
yeah. No, because
So
you have to kill the mouse first, right?
I don't. Oh,
So
it'd be
there's,
awful. I could
yeah.
like, and they can eat up to 12 mice a day or something. I think I'd go spare. Like,
Yeah, but
oh
like
no,
yeah, because then you look at the little mouse and the mouse looks at you with its little beady eyes and they're
I know,
like,
I know.
no, I can't. Yeah, because there's a technique. I remember this woman who I used to work with, um she had a rehab center and she was a lovely lady. I think she's maybe in her late 70s now. And she would just grab the mouse by its tail and just whack it on the counter and pass it to the bird. And I'm totally mortified by this whole thing. I'm like,
It's when you
no, I
realize
cannot.
you're never going to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know, Faraz, I had the same thing. This is going to be the dumbest thing I've ever going to say. Okay, so you cannot tell anyone else.
No, no, I wouldn't tell a soul.
I volunteered at this raptor center once, and they said, "Do you want to help cut up the food?"
Ah,
And I go,
no,
sure. And in my mind, I kid you not, I'm sure I was picturing carrots. Do you know
like
what I
scientists,
mean?
right?
Like cutting up vegetables or something. And I
Yeah.
just didn't, I had a brain frizz where I just didn't connect raptor with food. And I go in there and then they're cutting up quails, dead quails
Oh
and mice. And
no.
I'm like, in that moment, I
Yeah.
knew that I
Yeah.
was never going to be a raptor rehabilitator.
Yeah. These are the defining moments in our lives
And then
that we
you look at it
remember
and you go,
forever.
ah, ah.
Oh, this is the food.
Yeah, where's the
Okay.
carrots?
Yeah, yeah. Where are the seeds?
Do you know, I did actually write a story once at round about the same time of a vegetarian wedge darling. So, you know, we can live in a dream world.
Yeah.
I had this little idea that he got all, instead of eating the other birds, he made this little pact. It was a children's story, and he made a pact with all the other birds that he wouldn't eat them, but in return they would bring him lots of nuts and seeds and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cheese paste sandwiches.
Yeah. Yeah. Vegan cream cheese is very nice, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's getting better, actually, vegan food. So.
Yeah, yeah. Just a note to those of y'all who are looking on YouTube, feel free to ask any questions at any point in time. I am monitoring the chat, so if you have any questions for us, please let us know. If you're enjoying this banter, which I can't see any reason why you wouldn't be, but yeah. I have another question for you, Georgina, right? When you won, because I remember when you won the Invertebrates category in 2018, like how did you feel as a primarily bird photographer winning and like beating on all of these professional macro and insect photographers?
I felt like a complete fraud, actually, because I even said to them that I went to photograph birds on that day. But it was quite ironic because it was a flight. The image that won was a flying mud wasp with
the mud and everything.
But the ironic thing is I took it with birding equipment, the big long lens. I used bird photography techniques. So I thought about the shutter speed to capture action. I thought about how much depth of field I needed. It's a little insect. I also knew that it was a little insect. You couldn't track it in the camera.
Yeah.
Like it's like trying to do dragonflies with a big lens. It's really, really hard. So what I ended up doing was pre-focusing on an area, and then I did my favorite thing, which is to spray and pray.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it when wildlife photographers go, don't just shoot things, you've got to think about your shots and everything. And I think, oh my God, if they could see what I do, they'd be horrified. But I think it goes to show that there's different kinds of photography, and some things work for some people and some things work for other people. And there's no one way that's the best way. And if you are, and just a little tip, if you are always waiting until you see the perfect shot before you take the image, you are missing so much, because so much of that is incredible. We can't even see with the eye. It happens, if birds are fighting and things like that. Even when birds are preening, I love to just spray and pray, because there'll be one out of 20 shots, there might be one where the wing and the angle of the bird's head is aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And you can't pre-envisage that kind of shot. You either get it and you're lucky enough to get it, or not.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing that you can go, oh, this is what I'm going to get. Visualize, that's the word. I think that was a word in the English language.
Yeah. It's there somewhere. Yeah. It's just like a split second moment, when the feathers are all just like splayed in the right direction, stuff like that, and then the head turns this way, and it's like, if I was waiting for that, it never happens.
I know, and you know what? I've seen images where the photographer's got like the bird's eye right in where there's a gap in the feather. So there's shots like that you wouldn't see beforehand. Of course. That's why you get a good go. And if you get that, I've never got a really good one like that, but that would be the shot where you could get it preening or have the feathers like that, and you get the eye.
Nice. But like in your pictures, what I've noticed is that you have a really special eye for composition and light and all of this kind of thing. Like, is that something that you have naturally, or is it something that you developed over the years?
If I showed you my shots when I first started, they were shockers. I think I'm sure some people like Michelangelo and Da Vinci were born. There are some people who are born artists, but I think I'm living proof that you can learn it to a certain extent, because especially I came from the legal profession, and if anything's going to kill the imagination, it's having a job where you basically start every letter as, I refer to our correspondence on this day and to your da-da-da-da-da. And there's no empathy, there's no warmth, there's no
Mm-hmm.
like artistic
Yeah,
creativity in anything.
correct.
It
Yeah,
kills everything. So
yeah.
it probably took a long while to re-engage with something that was deep inside of me, that I've always wanted to be an artist. And to be honest, the reason I take photos is because I can't draw. If
Neither
I
can
could,
I.
I know if I could have a talent, it would be to, I've currently got an exhibition with this woman who's a botanic bird animal artist, and her images are so incredible, and she does them out of her head. And I was like, I would kill to be able to do that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just so beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
And I can't do it. I can't even draw a tree. I'm still doing it like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. I can't even write legibly.
Me neither. And I have to sign things, right? And
Yeah, I
I
need
went
to.
to for the exhibition, the frame is going, you're going to have to sign them. And I said, oh my
Yeah.
God. And he's given me a
Oh,
pencil and a rubber.
cool
And
sweat.
I kept signing and then rubbing it out because I'm terrible. And then in
Yeah.
the end, he was going to grab them off me, so I couldn't keep rubbing them out. I was going, oh my God, this is like my worst nightmare because my writing is so horrible.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever I have to sign like a print or anything like that, I get immediately I get nervous because I first of all I figured how to sign my name, and then like I started get like cold sweat and stuff like that because I'm
Yeah.
nervous now. Am I going to sign the wrong name? Like you idiot, you know?
Mine always goes on an angle, and I don't know why. I can't, psychologically, I can't stop it. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Like, am I
I
going to
was so
start in the
nervous.
right
I said to him,
place?
I should have had a glass of wine. I was dinkum too, because I think if he just took that little bit of dinkum. Do you know what dinkum means?
I know it's an Australian thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, serious, like it's the truth.
Yeah,
That it would just take away a little bit of the nerves and I'd
yeah.
relax. I mean, a couple of glasses would, I'm sure, have the opposite effect. Not be a good result.
Yeah.
There's a fine line.
Well, yeah, it's a fine squiggly line.
Yeah, it's so funny signing things because people don't talk about it, but I found that incredibly stressful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true. You were telling me that you also had a little bit a slideshow, some images that you would like to share with us.
Okay. Well, I thought I would just show you some of the Australian birds that I really
Yeah,
like. And all of
yeah.
these are images from, I've got a book coming out in online. It's saying 1st of October, but I've spoken to the publishers and they've said the bulk of the books aren't going to arrive till the end of October. So looking probably November in bookstores. So all of these images are from my, from my book, upcoming book. And most of them have never been, I've never shown anyone else.
Oh.
Some of them. Well, actually,
Oh.
that's not true. Quite a few of them have been shown. Sorry. So there's a few in there. There's a couple in there that haven't been shown anywhere.
Yeah, one or two at least, right?
One or two at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you want me to do that? And it's just, I suppose it just gives an idea of my style and
Yeah, because I
yeah.
think we want to see like, you know, some of your, because you have a very unique style, I think, among bird photographers, especially because everyone from like the majority mindset is like, you know, you go in tight, you see the bird really up in the camera like that and whatever, and you know,
Bird on branch, yeah.
Yeah, bird on a stick. So like I
Stick.
personally I don't like that sort of thing that much. Like it has its place, sure, but there are so many other things that are so beautiful.
I tell you what, and what's worrying me about that kind of photography is great getting popularity is the problem is people set up these perches and then what are they doing to get the birds on that stick?
Correct.
And this troubles me because I want people to go too far to the manipulating the birds area, and there's so many bird photographers out there and the habitat is disappearing. Populations increasing. Can you imagine the stress on the birds? There's climate change. So the last thing we want to encourage birders to do is to add to the stress of birds or try and manipulate their behaviour. And I just wish people would think, I want people to realise with my photography that you can get beautiful images without manipulating the birds. I don't do anything like that. I let them do what they do, and every single shot, I've never used call playback. I've never, like, none of my birds are set up shots where I've tried to lure them in or anything. So it's a natural environment. Sometimes they're really messy photos because the branches are messy and everything, but that's how nature
That's
is.
the habitat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you do get a perfect image, it's really special. It's special because it's really hard to get a perfect image of nature where there's not a distraction and things like that. So when you've got it, it's extra special. And you have that satisfaction of knowing that you didn't impact that bird unduly. We all have an impact in some way. So what I'm trying to do with this book coming up is talk about low impact photography rather than no impact. Because what we're doing is we're trying to minimize, humans have an impact regardless.
No matter what you do, you have an impact.
No matter what you do, you're going to. So let's try and be minimal impact photographers rather than maximum. Anyway, that's my little rant. But
ethics is a really, really good consideration that we should have to have. Everyone needs to have that consideration.
I think, and the problem is a lot of the top photographers are not talking about ethics at all. So they're just spruiking their techniques without adding a proviso of ethics. And so people are coming into it not even thinking about it. It's not that people are deliberately doing things to disturb birds. I think they've just never thought about it, and they've never been taught it, because nobody stopped and said, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. So it's just a matter of raising awareness. And what I want to do is I'm doing an ethical nature photography website, just to try and raise awareness, and also to inform members of the public of the kinds of things that do go on, so that they can make a decision before liking an image that well, there's those game farms in America I never even knew about, and people are posting pictures of captive cats that have been taken out of a cage and posed for photographers, and they get amazing pictures, but they don't tell people what they're doing, that it's not a wild animal, so they're being dishonest in the caption. They're also, a lot of these animals are kept in really diabolical conditions. Terrible conditions. So it's really important, I think, that we educate the public. They're just completely ignorant. I mean, if I'm ignorant about what goes on over there, people must be so ignorant, who are not photographers, about everything, I think. You see those cute photos of like a grasshopper on a frog and things like that, and you're thinking, there's no way that's natural photo.
But
and people are like, wow. And I was like, that's not natural. It doesn't happen.
I saw one of like some ants, and the ants are all like holding up things like this. And everyone was just like, wow, this is an amazing, nature is so amazing. I'm like, no, this is not nature at all. These ants are dead, ladies and gentlemen. And this is staged. Like a frozen picture.
Do you know,
they freeze them.
The other thing I've heard that they do, like a lot of those frog images, they tie a fishing line to the frogs,
and then they
to get
remove
their
the
legs
lines
in positions.
And then they remove the lines in Photoshop.
I know.
Yeah, so
it's just,
I think, and it's something that I appreciate that you're doing, that you're spreading this awareness and showing that, like, people who are the consumers of wildlife photography, which are the viewers, the people who like a picture, the people who can share a picture, the hubs, the Instagram hubs, who that have thousands of followers, and they can share and they can amplify a certain voice. They have a responsibility also. We all have a responsibility as to what we like and what we don't like.
I think it's really interesting, because I've been talking to another photographer in Australia who's an international, what are they called? The International League of Conservation Photographers.
ILCP.
And he's the chair of the ethics committee, and they've just done this whole thing about, when we judge competitions, requiring now, before we agree to judge, that they have good ethical guidelines. And and it's something that I haven't necessarily been doing myself, but I've made the decision that that's something that I need to do too, because competitions are really important. Because if people see the rule in the competition, it's kind of letting them know what is acceptable and what isn't, in a non-confronting way. And if they can't enter image, of course there's a lot of people going to lie anyway, but if it says you can't enter that image, it takes away a lot of the impetus for a lot of people to take these images. So it's really important to do that. The other thing is they talk about facilitating. And so it's not only the people who are doing very unethical things, but it's all the other peers that are not saying anything about it are actually facilitating that unethical conduct. So I think the silence is the same as being complicit, basically. So I think it's not okay to say, I just don't talk about it. I think that we have to start making a stand. It's not about naming and shaming. It's just about saying, this is what is good thing to do. This is what is not. Because people are definitely, when I was a lawyer, it's really interesting, and there's like a professional courtesy thing happening. And we once had this lawyer when I worked in an investigation agency who did this really, really illegal, completely unethical stuff. And I wanted to report into the Legal Practice Board. And the two senior lawyers in this organisation I worked with both told me not to, because you don't want to rat on another lawyer and mud sticks and all of this stuff. And I was horrified that was their attitude, that you don't, and I think a little bit of that goes on in the bird. For every profession, I think that happens. Doctors, I'm sure there's every profession. Nobody wants to be the one, But that's what allows things to happen if you don't.
Correct.
If you don't. And then what happens is people like me who do speak out, and then we're like almost like pariahs.
Yeah.
In our own profession.
I'm a proud pariah. No problem. Yeah. I love to speak out. I love to name names, because it's like that's what activism is as well, and that's what change. That's what gets things to change.
The problem is I caution other people from doing it. I think I can do it because I've got it's going to sound conceited, but I think it has to come from someone who's had a bit of success, because what happens is otherwise someone told me they questioned someone about something, and then they got told, do you know who this photographer is? They're really got a lot of followers. How dare you question them? So it was like, if you're nobody, people disregard.
That's right.
So, and also social media is so toxic. People can get really nasty. So I'm just a little bit conscious that I say to people, just don't comment, and leave the heavy lifting to me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I've got a question for you from the chat. Did you evolve into ethical photography and low impact? Did you use playback and or bait at first, or was awareness about impact there from the go?
I think I did. I've never used call playback. I've always had an issue with it, because it just didn't seem right. And just so people know, there is evidence that it's the physiological impact of it it's basically you're physiologically raising the stress hormone in the bird. And then studies have shown that people go, the bird was fine when I left, but the problem is that kind of stress is reducing the lifespan of the bird, and that's something you're never going to see. The other thing people don't realize is the cumulative impact. We can't just go where we just did it here and it's fine, because habitat shrinking, number of photographers is increasing exponentially. So you have to start asking yourself, what if 100 people did this to this bird or this area? That has an impact. And that is in reality what is happening in many locations. For instance, you go to this location to see this rare species. And the other thing people fail to realize about it is it's actually, and maybe this is my legal background coming in, is a form of harassment under the legislation, and that's illegal. So it's actually illegal to do it. And I think birders have because I wasn't always a birder, I think I've come to it with a more objective view of, say, look, more like what a general member of the public would. And I've said, hey, you're doing something that interferes with the natural behaviour of the bird. It actually increases its physiological stress levels far greater than just the presence of a person or even pishing. I don't think pishing would raise curiosity, but it doesn't necessarily raise the stress hormone of a bird. So anyway, to answer that question, I've never done call playback. I have photographed birds at feeders and things. Like there's some places, national parks, or not national parks, but places where people put out food, and then you see the parrot right there. I have photographed it. but it's not something that personally I do. And these days I won't even use those photos because I prefer my images to be totally 100%
Natural.
wild.
Yeah.
And I find it's really weird. So that even when I've had a situation, like I just recently went up north and there's a guy who puts out water for birds, and I don't have a problem with that because it's a really hot area and you can get to 45 degrees. And it's in a hide, you're not disturbing, and I don't have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, it didn't give me the same buzz getting the image. It felt like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
I
just
didn't
didn't
really
enjoy
view
it.
it that much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he's not doing anything. He had them in a protected area, they weren't susceptible to raptors and things, but I just thought,
Yeah.
what? It's just not me. I like the
Yeah.
challenge of it and crawling through the grass or coming across unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Having said that though, and I'm really passionate about not having nesting bird images. And part of that has come from experience as well,
Yeah.
because before I was a birder, my brother had put a ladder up against a nest. I think he was pruning the trees and he came across a nest of a silvereye. And he said, there's a nesting silvereye. And I went up. When you're first birding, you're so excited.
Yeah.
And you're just so excited to see them. You don't think of anything else. And I get why people do it, because you are excited and you genuinely are fascinated and you love the birds. And so I went up the ladder. I was so excited and I looked into this nest. The little birds disappeared. They just flushed, every single one, into the tree. I couldn't find them. I freaked out and I thought, I don't know, because they were tiny and they weren't properly fledged. And from that moment on, I thought, that's when I've never felt so sick in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I thought, I never want to do that. And I want to try and help other people to avoid that mistake. And I do understand, and we do evolve. And I do get that a lot of these things that I'm talking about have been normalized, and a lot of people have done it, and it's been done for a long time. And a lot of people just don't realize. And that's why what I'm doing, I want to be more about education and trying to get people to change. So it's not about saying, oh, you did wrong, you're tarnished forever. It's about, hey, let's move forward in a positive way.
Yeah,
and
forever cursed.
Yeah, and my big thing now is to say to people, getting an image of a bird, I think that we need to change the way they view it. It's not a right, it's a privilege.
Correct.
So you have to be prepared to walk away if you can't get that photo, rather than pursue a bird, stress it, or do something else. You have to say, okay, the bird's gone, it's too hard. If I walk there, I'm going to trample through, pristine vegetation. Just walk away. It doesn't matter. Does it really matter if you don't get that shot? It doesn't actually.
Yeah. Oh boy. I really wish more people would get that, that mindset.
We have to change it. I think it's going to take a while and we won't be able to change everyone, but if we can change some of the people, we are lessening the impact for some birds,
You see, I think that we're so as a people, we're so driven by results,
and it's instant gratification because of social media and everything. I have a friend who used to take pictures of birds in the 60s and 70s, and he was setting up hides right at nests with the flash, like everything I would say today don't do. But in those days, they didn't have the images at all of some species. So there was a great justification for it. Plus, you think about the camera, it was manual wind on, manual focus. I mean, 180 millimeters was the longest focal length he could get.
No
magazines
way.
required. Magazines required. I know. So it was so hard. And you know what he said to me? He said, I would never do that today. He said, and he's 80 something now. And he said, I would never do that today. He said, because there's simply no longer the need for the images. So he recognized it. And he said, it was justified because a lot of the images, he actually discovered species of a mammal that we thought was extinct. So he did a lot of good, and it was genuinely educational. And he said there were only 3 other photographers in Australia doing what he was doing. But he has recognized times have changed. We have to change the way we do things.
And plus there were a lot more birds around, and the wildlife was not as imperiled as it is now.
No, and it's not as stressed. You think they're actually operating in a highly stressed environment, because environmental stress is a stress. So if it's heating up, They're
Correct.
under, physiologically, they're already under enormous stress. And people tend to think that if a bird, one of the big arguments have is people have nesting birds that are in public places, and they say, oh, in public places, they're fine. But if you look at a bird, I've had a bird nesting in the pot plant outside the door.
Mm-hmm.
They would not go to that nest if you're
If you're
anywhere
there,
looking at
yeah,
them. No.
yeah,
So there could be a public place, but the difference is
yeah,
humans are doing what humans do. So if they keep walking, that's not a problem.
yeah,
What happens is if you stop and you stare at them and point something at them,
yeah.
then they're going to get
They
stressed.
always know where your
They
attention is.
know. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter because they've got really good eyesight. They're better than we are.
yeah,
And then
by far.
the other thing is I read this article that's habituation is
Yeah,
a bit of a I've always said, oh, go where birds are habituated. But then I read this article, and I think it is still better in some ways. But like, for instance, like nesting birds, yes, they're habituated to humans. But this article said that sometimes these birds in very public environments, it's like the duck that looks really calm on the water, but the feet are paddling really
yeah, yeah,
fast underneath. They said they're actually very stressed. And they found that sometimes a small stress that wouldn't ordinarily affect a bird, say, in a proper bush environment, can
yeah,
have catastrophic consequences for birds
yeah.
in very public places. So it's a bit like the mouse that sank the boat. So far from being more able to cope with stress, they're actually less able to cope with additional stress.
It's
So it's just really
interesting.
interesting. It shows that we don't know everything.
Yeah,
And this is why I think we should be proceeding with caution.
yeah,
Sorry.
completely, completely.
You've got me going on my topic.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point of this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I think also as photographers, we have a responsibility in capturing things. And,
Yes. Honesty and
because,
captioning as well.
yes, because it's not even like to say, well, like for me, like I would I would never photograph a bird at its nest, right? So like I had some hummingbirds nesting at home by me, and I went and I photographed the mother coming and feeding the young and so on. But I made sure to tell people when I did that the whole process involved, I photographed it from a distance with a long lens. I photographed it while hiding out, while the mother was comfortable, and I left immediately afterwards and so on. And these are the things that we have to be honest about, so that people would not try to emulate what we do with, with even a shorter focal length. And, well, everyone has a telephoto picture of this. So I want a wide angle shot. So I'm just going to go and stand next to the nest like this. Yeah. So, but anyway,
I mean, it is problem. I mean, a lot of the problem is monkey see, monkey do, I call it.
yeah,
And that's the problem.
yeah. We are monkeys. At the end of the day, we're monkeys. We're just
Even with
wearing clothes.
captioning, I think a lot of people just don't read the captions. That's the problem.
Yeah,
As
yeah. It's
well.
another big
Yeah.
problem too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 But yeah, anyway, you were going to
All right,
show
we go
us.
to the photos. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we've been waiting on.
All right.
So I think you should.
Oh, I've started it now. It's a bit random.
Yeah.
But actually, I put this image in because you like waders. So I thought I better put one wader in. Have you got it up?
Yeah, I think it should be up. Yeah.
Can you see?
I can see. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a
Ooh.
curlew sandpiper. It's just a different kind of shot, I suppose, emblematic of the kind of shots I like to take as well,
Yeah.
with a bit more of the habitat. So this was just a shallow water estuary, and it was a calm day, so you had a beautiful reflection. And I haven't edited anything out of that photo, so it's not like I've gone along and taken stuff
Yeah.
out. It's just how it was, and I love the simplicity. But the curlew sandpiper is one of those migratory waders that's getting towards critically endangered, because these ones that come to Australia go via the Yellow Sea, and there's been a lot of development in the Yellow Sea of the mudflats, and it's affected the curlew sandpiper. The eastern curlews have had a 80% decline in the last 30 years, and same with the bar-tailed godwits. So
And yeah, and I
it's a
think
huge problem.
Yeah, and the spoonbill sandpipers pass through there as well.
The spoonbill sandpipers, yes, and they're so beautiful, and they're
Yeah.
really the most endangered. I think there's like this ridiculous, like 100 or something left. It's
Uh,
just so critical.
I don't
I mean,
know.
it's terrible.
Have you seen them?
I've only seen pictures. No, they
Oh,
don't
yeah,
come to
yeah.
Australia, so I'm not sure where they end up going.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, that's another
Okay.
topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talking of more endangered birds. Oh, see, slideshow from current slide. Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show some Australian birds. So this is a Carnaby's black cockatoo, and he's
Ooh,
feeding on a native flower.
yeah.
I mean, I love the native bush as well. I really liked the plant.
Yeah.
And they've had a bit of a decline as well, persecuted by orchardists, like where I come from.
Yeah.
Still shooting them because even though it's illegal, but they're the most beautiful birds. Like if you saw them, you'd just die. They're so wonderful. Big, strong bills, and they just pull
Hmm.
apart plants.
Yeah.
Great
I've been,
destroyers.
yeah. I was looking at someone's video of not this species, another one, and their eyes have this kind of movement, and it's not like the eye.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah,
God, I sound like a crazy person trying to describe this, but you have to see it
yeah.
to understand what I'm saying. So sorry, everyone. But yeah.
Oh, this is another one because we've got a lot of parrots in Australia. This is one that's I took just in the backyard of our
Oh,
house
gosh.
on a native. This is a typical native plant, and I always used to think this is a red cap parrot, and I think it's endemic to this area, so it's only found in my part of Australia.
Yeah.
Um, and I used to think, why is it that ridiculously gaudy color? It's got this red head, this lime
Yeah.
green thing, and its butt's lime green as well. And it's got
That's
purpley
true.
blue chest, and then red there, and then green on the back.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. And then I went out the back one day, and it's sitting on this flower, and it's the
It's got,
native flower, and it's like,
yeah, the
oh
same
my
colors.
god!
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it just twigged that this, nature has it's not stupid, it's
No,
worked out.
not at all.
I
We
mean, it
are.
was, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And it's the adaptation. So it's not only the color, and also if you see his bill, it's quite long. And
Hmm.
one of his primary sources of food is the marri tree, which has these gum nuts on them. So that bill is designed, 80% of their food or something is this marri tree. So 80% of their food comes from this nut. So the bill is designed to go in and get this tiny little seed out of this
Yeah.
gum nut. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at them in a field guide or something like that, and you see all of these colors, and you're just thinking, wow, well, yeah. That the other thing about that is that you think, well, hey, there's no way that I'm going to be able to miss this bird if I see it out.
no, no.
Then you see it in its natural habitat, and you realize, oh, it just blends in totally.
Did the trogons do that? Because
Yeah.
trogons always look really outrageously coloured to me.
Yeah,
It's like,
and
oh,
then they'll be
yeah.
calling, and then you'd be like, "Where's a trogon?" But you can't
Uh,
find it because it just blends in perfectly with where it is.
especially when the jungle, when you're looking up, it's kind of really hard to see.
Yeah,
I put this one in because everybody
yeah. This
knows
is
this
your
image in our
classic.
mind. And it's so Australian too, because these pink galahs are like everywhere. So they're really common, and Australians get so used to them. But overseas people, but it's really cool to have a pink pink
Yeah,
parrot.
I've never seen one, so
And they behave so badly, and I
yeah,
just love this one biting the chest of the other one. And if you
yeah,
look, the one at the top has got a red eye.
yeah.
That's
So there's yeah,
that's the female, I'm pretty sure, unless I've got it the wrong way around. And the male has the black eye, so there. And
ooh,
then the one at the bottom is another female. So you can
yeah.
see, yeah, there's two. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
No, that's nice.
And
That's
you know
pretty
what?
cool.
This stump is in this really remote town in outback New South Wales, but it's a really popular birding spot. And everybody who
Yeah,
goes there knows this stump. And my
yeah.
friend went there like 2 years after I was there, and he's got a picture of 3 galahs on the same stump. And it's like they're still there.
Yeah, they never moved.
They still arguing. It's like, oh wow, so funny. I had to put this in because I
Ooh.
love pigeons ever since I
Yeah,
realized there was more than
spinifex.
one species. Yeah, it's a spinifex pigeon. Oh, you've heard me go on about them because they are the
Yeah,
coolest birds ever. I mean, look at that head. And look at the
yeah,
mask on them. I had an old birding friend who used to say they look like masked superheroes, and they're
yeah.
just wicked. Do you know Australia's got, I think it's got more species of pigeons than any other country in the world. So we're really, really blessed.
And probably parrots too.
Not as many as South America, I think,
Yeah,
have more. Yeah, we got more than Africa.
yeah.
Africa doesn't have that many
But in
actually.
terms of
It's more South America.
country, because y'all are one country, I'm
Mm.
thinking because like in South America
I
you
think
got
there might be more in like Brazil and places like that. They've got a
could be
lot. They've got a
could
lot.
be. That's something we have to check out.
Yeah. This is another. Actually, this is a cockatiel.
Yeah,
Are very common in aviaries around the world. The indigenous name was Wero, or one of them. So we call them Weros as well. Um, and they're actually the smallest cockatoo in the world, and they're
oh,
incredibly gentle. A lot of the cockatoos are noisy and aggressive.
yeah,
Um, this is a very small, very gentle little bird. You wouldn't realize it was a cockatoo. And there you go. Oh, this is another
yeah.
classic Australian bird, emu.
Wow. Oh,
And
a little
they were
berry.
feeding. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
and
sure that's a mistletoe bush. So
yeah,
you know about mistletoes, and they grow on other plants, and they're
yeah,
a what do you call it? Parasitic plant. They're really quite
yeah.
amazing.
Oh, and you can
But
see the
yeah,
dribble.
and it was really interesting because when I was watching it, you couldn't really see that berry. It happened so quickly that they're feeding, and this is another advantage of spray and pray. So I
Yeah.
spray and pray, and then there was the only image where there's a little berry in the mouth. So
Whoa. I love how the color of the eyes mirror the color of the berry.
I know, I know,
Yeah, everything is perfect.
yeah.
Oh.
Um,
Mm.
this is another image. I've got this in the exhibition at the moment. Everyone keeps thinking it's a painting, and I keep you just say it's a photo. So
Yeah,
like half my pictures with the white backgrounds, the high key, they all
yeah.
think are paintings, and I'm like, no, they're all photos. And so I'm going, and it's like every day, multiple times, I'm explaining about overexposing on a grey, cloudy
Yeah,
sky. And this is the advantage because you don't get those harsh shadows because it's like diffuse light. So we haven't got direct contrasty light. And then what you can do is if you have positive exposure compensation by like 3 or 4
yeah.
stops, you
Exposed
can
to the
get that
light.
white background. In fact, I did slightly underexpose this image, so I had to lighten it in post-processing, and I did get a bit of noise, so I had to denoise it, which is why it probably adds to that ethereal feeling of it. So part of it might
True.
be the fact that I've had to remove some of the noise and
Yeah. But this is so busy and it's just like so, like people always say, well, busy images are not good, but this is like one of those that the busyness works for it so
I tell
well.
you what, these birds are really common in Australia, and they're very aggressive little honey eaters.
Yeah,
And everybody who knows them, this is so typical of them. What I love about it is it summarizes them in one shot. This
yeah,
summarizes that bird perfectly. They're really cheeky. They're always having arguments. There's always,
yeah,
it's chaos.
pretty much,
Yeah.
pretty much.
I just put
Ooh,
this one in because this is like an example of, I've been really fascinated by the behavior of kleptoparasitism, and you would get
yeah,
it with the frigate birds. So
yeah,
I've got a frigate bird photo as well, but this is you can see there's a silver gull has a
right.
fish. He
Yeah,
stole that off that
from the
turn in the
turn.
middle.
Yeah,
So all the
yeah.
other seagulls are around trying to steal the fish, and there's their turn trying to get back the fish that was stolen off it. So it's kind
Oh,
of like fascinating behavior
yeah.
among birds.
Yeah, these things happen all the time and like fishing depots and
Yeah.
whatever and
Yeah.
no one ever bats an eye.
Mm.
Yeah, but this is gorgeous. Like there we go.
So this is,
That's
I
fantastic.
just think I love frigate birds, and I know people are really down on them because they're doing things like this to boobies.
Uh-huh.
But I think my other way of looking at it was, well, they could be like a raptor and kill the bird, but they don't. All they're doing is mugging him, getting
Yeah,
his fish.
yeah,
They grab them
Wow.
by the stomach, they grab them by the feet, they shake them until they disgorge their catch.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the consequence I noticed on Christmas Island was the boobies are really pissed off. There's a lot
Yeah.
of really angry boobies on Christmas
Yeah.
Island because they're constantly being attacked by the frigate bird.
Yeah. And all they have to do is fly off. And
Yeah,
then all
yeah.
the frigate birds are like after them and stuff like that.
Oh
No,
man,
I love frigate birds,
yeah,
honestly.
I do too.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah,
they are magnificent birds, aren't they? And what I find interesting is that they've evolved. Their feet are pathetic.
yeah, yeah,
They basically now have to mug birds because they've lost the ability to kind
yeah.
of catch their own fish.
Yeah, they
And
can't hunt.
yeah,
They
no,
can't even
they
get
can't
wet.
hunt. No,
Yeah,
no, it's amazing. They're
yeah.
totally,
They're like they're seabirds, but they can't get wet.
yeah,
So what a thing. What an existence, like
I
people don't
know.
like them. Like feel sorry for them,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I love them.
yeah.
And then I put this one in. This is a Brolga.
Ah,
And they are, look at this bird. This was playing. So what he was doing is picking up bits of grass and throwing them in the air. And then he's like his foot up. And I was like, this is
yeah.
the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen.
I was about to say the exact same thing. Because look at that pose. They're like, oh,
Crazy. It's like crazy. And
yeah,
when I saw them doing it, I was like, am I seeing things? And that's what I love. And this is the other thing I want to say to people when they're calling birds in and setting up perches, what they're missing is the natural behavior. And the natural
yes.
behavior of birds is so amazing.
It's
And
hilarious.
you're only going to get that if you take the time to watch and observe them doing things naturally. There's so much we have to learn about birds. And I've talked to someone like a really old bird and said, did you know Brolgas did this? And he had no idea they even did it. So it just shows you that there's so much more we have to learn about the behavior.
Correct.
I mean, we know they do the courting dances, but who knew?
Yeah, this is hilarious.
This is hilarious. I know. And they were doing it all the time. It wasn't a one-off. It was a very common behavior.
It's yeah. Oh.
And what happened with this image too, there's a lot of heat haze, and I used it with a long lens, and it's not a perfect image quality, but I decided it was good enough, and the behavior is so incredible. But that's one of the problems you'd probably have where you are, and here if it's really humid. But here we get a lot of dry heat, but it does distort the image, and it's hard. No matter what you do, you can't get a sharp shot. So
especially at distance.
Yeah, I took this at 1200 millimeters, so I did sharpen it. Because the heat haze was kicking in really badly.
Yeah. I strangely enough, we don't really get that heat haze problem here. Which is odd because it's hot, but I think it's because the heat haze comes from a temperature gradient. So like if there's heat radiating off the ground and the air isn't that hot, or vice versa, or something like that. Because we got it when we were in Kenya, and there was like tremendous heat haze. But like I'm trying to shoot these rhinos and a pair of white rhinos, and they're sleeping, but so we don't want to get like too close to them. And it's not hot. Like I'm not feeling hot, but there was so much heat haze because the sun was baking the ground, but the wind, it was high altitude as well. So like the wind was so cool. Just the interaction of that gave us, mega heat haze.
And I think also you've got a lot of greenery that might offset.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got the humidity, maybe because in Australia we don't have that. When it's hot, it's dry ground. So it's rock and it's dirt. There's nothing to kind of counteract the heat. There's no greenery there.
I think also, coming to think of it, it's the fact that we're such a small island, so our temperature is very well moderated by the ocean.
Yes, I remember learning that in geography, that water moderates the temperature, and the further inland you go, the more extreme it gets. Oh my goodness me! See, school helps.
Yeah. Oh yeah. One thing I love
you
about
probably
that.
Want to get. Am I going on too long?
No, you can go ahead because I'm enjoying this.
So this one, I just did this one it's another image. about just utilizing the light. And you know how I talk about black backgrounds and things like that, but this is the early
Background.
morning, the sun is on the duck, but behind him hasn't got the sunlight yet, so you
Yeah.
kind of expose for the highlights and their background's a bit darker, but you can get the most beautiful effects. And you spray and pray, and it's the shape of the head and the water spout. You know, there's only
And that
one shot in this
expression.
series. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then because you're at water level, you're getting that lovely reflection of the water, like the streaky lines.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people to experiment a bit. There's so much potential in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could never completely, oh, this is one of my favorites of yours.
Oh, do you know what? This image is one of my favorites too. And I think also I had envisaged this image for a couple of years. I thought about this. I don't know if you remember my earlier shots a couple of years ago of stilts with a bit of cloud in the water. And I remember,
Yeah.
and at that time I thought there's so much potential in this idea.
Yeah.
And then I found this location, and there was a cliff overlooking this estuary. And I went back a few days in a row, and on the third day or something, there was no wind. There was these stilts, 5 stilts. So I had, this is 4. I have another one with 5. And I was like,
Yeah.
because you have to have an odd number.
Yeah, I know, right?
And then the most amazing sunset, you know, like with a bit of cloud, and it reflects the color, and the colors of the water changed. And I had a 600 millimeter lens, but when I saw what was happening, I wanted to get the bigger picture. I quickly swapped to the 100 to 400. So this is only taken at 200 millimeters. So anyone could take this shot almost with any camera. It's just about it's just about having the vision. And what you're looking at is all water reflection. Because I remember someone saying, oh, it's hard to see where the sky starts and the water ends. But
no, it's
actually,
sky and water.
There's no sky there at all. That's 100% reflection. And it can be hard to get your head around. But yeah, I like it because it's different. It shows the habitat. It's,
It breaks the rules, because, you know, like in bird photography, they always tell you, well, you have to get low and you have to use a long lens. And I'm like, no, if you don't get low and you shoot from high up, you get these wonderful reflections.
I know. And you know what's, the next day I went back to that spot. It was windy. The birds had disappeared, and there was not the same sunset. And I thought, wow, it's also being in the right place at the right time. And then being able to, I suppose, make the most of it. And a lot of it is about seeing the potential of what you're looking at. And that's often why I say it's good to enter competitions or to look at competition images, because you may not think it's having an impact, but what's happening is it's storing in the back of your mind this image or this idea. And one day you'll be out there and suddenly you'll see that vision, and you won't realize it's a subconscious thing, but it's because you've seen a shot like that you've really liked. And suddenly that's opened up your mind to a possibility of what's in front of you that you might never have seen if you've never. So the more nature images you look at that you like and admire, the more likely you are to be able to take that shot yourself.
Yeah. And not on Instagram, because Instagram won't let you show one kind of picture.
It's a killer because it's a zoomed in. I mean, I do some of those too. I crop too closely and I go, what the hell?
Yeah, I put one up yesterday, and it's a really old picture, but I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this for some likes, you know?
We capitulate to the popular thing, but I hate myself after.
Completely.
Oh my God. And then someone will say, why did you crop that close? And it's like, I was trying to do the Instagram crop.
Yeah, I just want to be cool. Come on. Yeah.
I know. It's like, which way do you go? But then, I've been going through a phase of stuff. I'm just going to do what I like lately. And so you're getting the bird and increasingly in my photos, the bird's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I have one of my Instagram followers. He's always like, "Oh, I have to put on my glasses. You always make me put on my glasses to find the bird."
To find the bird.
Yeah.
I've got a series that I've got envisioned where I've taken frogs in camo, like in a really that are well camouflaged, and insects and fish and stuff. And I thought I'm going to do this whole series of posts where I'm going to say find the animal. And I reckon it'd be really cool because you have to go. And sometimes I've looked at the photo and I can't even find it. And then, but the worst time, right, is where I think that I've photographed an animal. And so I've spent ages looking at this photo, and then I've realized it really is just
a leaf.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's an accidental photo or something, and there's nothing in it. I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Yeah. But you're looking because it's like, well, suppose I did photograph something and I just
There
can't
was
remember.
something there. I did it the other day. I was looking for the grasshopper, and then at the end I realized after about 10 minutes there's no grasshopper. Oh dear.
That's hilarious.
Anyway, I know. Oh, I'll put
Yeah.
this one in because finches are another bird that's really iconic in Australia. But also I love quirky birds. So part of what I do is I like to get their personality in shots like this. So
yeah, and
it's not quite sharp, this shot, but
yeah, but it's still a very unique view, and especially for finches, because
a little daggy, hey.
Yeah.
It's like finches can be unco too.
Yeah, right. Just a little bit awkward. Yeah, most of us see these species of finches in cages. You know.
Oh no! Do you know what? This is the most beautiful finch I reckon in the Pilbara area. It's so striking. This is a youngish one, but the adults have that black on the chest. There's more black and there's more red on the chest. Oh my God, you die. They're so beautiful. Well, it's so exciting to go to a waterhole in Australia in the outback and then have these little finches come down. And if you sit quietly, you don't have to be in camouflage or anything. They'll just sit nearby and it's I'm alive when I'm out in the outback because we have these beautiful spinifex grasses, these white gum trees with these red rocks at sunset, and then you've got little birds like this. It's you feel alive. It's a bit like Africa, but we don't have the giraffe walking past.
Yeah.
a bit like Africa, but not quite.
Yeah.
So this is just an example of the kind of thing I do. Is a tern, but this is a backlit one flying with a fish. So just if you try and get birds in flight shots to try and, this one there was a hill behind that was in the shadow, and I knew that the sun would rise off to the left and it would I'd be able to get the backlight. So this is about seeing the opportunity and then also knowing how to do it in camera, so to make sure you don't overexpose the backlit bits and to get that background you've got to underexpose the image by several stops.
Of course, this is exquisite. You know, the whole rim light and everything. Light coming through the bill, and this is wonderful.
It's really nice because this is a product of understanding the camera, understanding how to utilize light, and also seeing an opportunity. When I went there and realized that I could get that shot, I went out a few mornings in a row to try and get it. And then I'm just in the book that's coming out in October. It's called For the Love of Birds. It's being published by Australian Geographic, so they did all the design and distribution, and all my proceeds go to conservation.
Yay. Well
and then
done.
They wrote that little blurb at the end, and I was like, oh man, you made me sound so good.
Well, I think it's deserving, I would say. From my
what I like about it is they say I portray birds. This is what I wanted to do as individuals, each with a character of its own and intelligence and beauty to be admired. And that's what I talk about in the book, because that's what I want to say to people. They're not just a species. That bird is an individual. It's got its own personality. It's not just something you tick off a list. It's an. If I could just convey, and I want it to be ordinary people too, to start thinking of birds as individuals that deserve a place on this earth in their own right, and not for any other reason. So, and also you'll be pleased to know I got them to make sure they put my boobies bottom on the back page.
I was going to talk about that.
Cover of the book. It's got to have the Georgina touch.
Yeah. I was gonna. I saw that. And I'm like, yes, of course. It must have that.
I know it's really hard when you get someone else designing the book, because you can make changes, but you don't want to be too bossy. But on the other hand, So this is a little sneak peek of what's inside, like it looks like, and it's got chapters: Aussie icons, the good, the bad, and the ugly, birdscapes, portrait gallery, flights of fancy, light and dark, water world, quirky and dangerous. So I have a little bit of a blurb about birds and my approach and the importance of photography, and also about conservation.
I remember
And
that honey
then,
eater picture from the on the top left.
oh, yes, yes,
Yeah, that's a
yes.
lovely one.
Um, um, and it's available for pre-order now online from
Ooh,
most bookstores. Oh, and that's it. Oh,
oh, look
that's
at
it.
that.
Oh, this one, tell you what, this is my beloved mud skippers. So when I photograph my mud skippers on the mud flats, there's
Yeah,
always, it's actually quite nice because the last 2 years I've been going back to the same place and spending a week there. And I'm sure it's the same herons, and there's a
yeah,
pair of them in the same spot. And like they both times they've walked, I've been there at one stage or another, they'll come right up to me too close to even photograph. They just
yeah,
get used to me lying there, but they
yeah.
also eat my mud skippers. But they're quite
Oh,
amazing herons because they 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 land in those little young mangroves,
yeah,
and they'll lean down and like pointing till they're almost
yeah.
touching the mud, and then suddenly, oh, I'm quite fond of them, but at the same time, I'm horrified when they take one of my little muddies. I love my mud
Yeah,
skippers.
that's how I found you, you know. I think that's the first time I saw your work was that mud skipper picture.
Oh, I love mud skippers. And
Yeah.
I'm trying, do you know what? I'm trying to get the local WA museum. They've got this line of plush toys, like soft teddies. And my sister's the chair of the museum there. And I said to her,
Oh,
you've
please.
got to make them have a mud skipper.
You have to. You
So
have
she's
to.
raised it. She has
Yeah.
raised it at the meeting.
Really?
So I'm using my influence. And I said, tell them
Yeah,
I'll promote it online. And they're like, oh, I don't know if it'll be popular. And I'm like, I promise you, I could give you
it
photos.
is.
But I have to have creative control because I know what a cute mud skipper looks like.
Yeah, that's right. That they gotta have like
Got to
all
be a
the
winner.
blue. Yeah.
Yes, they've got to have the
Mm.
blue spots and the
Yeah.
googly eyes. And
Yeah, of
I'm telling
course.
you.
And the mouth's gotta be open. Ah.
Ah,
Yeah.
argue. That's how they fight. They just go, oh my God, they're the biggest dags.
That is
Anyway.
hilarious. That is hilarious. And I really enjoy these herons as well, the striated herons, because they're so smart and they're so
Yes.
calculating. They are ridiculous, you know. I've seen them fishing, like with
Oh,
bait.
yes. I saw a video of that and I was like, oh my God, they're putting bread or something in. And
Yeah,
then
they put bread, they put like little pieces of leaves and stuff like that on the water that float, and then when the fish come in, they would grab the fish.
that's
And if the fish
incredible.
that comes in is too big, they would remove the bait. And then when the fish
No.
leave, they
Oh,
would
I
put it
saw
back.
that. I saw that in a video and I
Yeah,
was like, that's amazing.
yeah.
That is so incredible.
There is so much that we don't know about, and we say things like bird brain and whatever, but we have no clue.
No, that's what I reckon. That's why I want people to be more natural and let birds do things naturally and then capture those behaviors because we've got so much more we can see about birds. That's the shame about the the move towards these setups and staged
Oh
photos is that
yeah,
you're missing all of this stuff,
yeah,
and we're losing the opportunity to kind of see birds in a different way. um,
completely,
I love those.
completely.
I love mangrove roots though. Aren't they cool?
I
Those
love it's
mangroves.
it's so different from the mangroves that we have here because like
Oh,
those roots
really?
are squiggly sort of way, like ours are straight up when they're coming up. But yeah, like that, yeah. I was going to talk about that those roots, how they're coming up and they have the little waves in them and stuff.
Yeah.
Everything. I also want to make special mention of how, and this is a pet peeve of mine, of how you include the all of the vegetation. So like the ends of the leaves are not clipped. That's something that I look at all the time. So like this and the some of the other pictures that you shared here, they're all like they're really, really pleasing, artistically speaking.
I'm not sure. What do you mean? Oh, you mean the whole plant's in
The
there?
whole plant, yeah, the whole plant,
The
all of the
habitat. See,
leaves.
this is the shame of the thing is, you want to see more habitat, don't you? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like how the little mangrove here is, like none of the leaves are clipped. Like some people would be tempted to just like crop it out and just getting closer to the bird, but it frames the bird perfectly, and
Oh no,
it's
because I
like a
love. Yeah,
yeah,
for me, this shot is about that whole habitat, the atmosphere, and
yeah,
he
yeah,
gets the mud skipper, and then what he does is he skulks through the mangrove.
Yeah.
You know how they
Yeah.
skulk? They kind of go,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
oh, I really like them. And there's what really happens, I realize there's a wind that blows because I've got it twice now, and it blows their hair up and they look really
Yes.
funny.
Yeah. 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 I think
Like
I
they
have
got
a
an Elvis
picture.
Presley hairdo.
Yeah. I think
And
I've
so
got
there's
a
this,
picture of one
yeah,
with
and
that hair
so
like
they're
that.
skulking along with their Elvis Presley hairdo, and you go, this is so funny. And like, you're the
Yeah.
only one who can see it. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
I
amazing.
do. I got a soft spot for these birds. We hang out together a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I've got a soft spot for I think many different birds.
I know that's the problem. I say, I've never
Exactly
said
right.
that before. But I also love my mud skippers. So I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
completely,
Anyway.
completely. But anyway, I think it's about time we sort of wrap
Yeah,
up
I know.
now. So
I know. I've
I
talked for
got
too
one more
long, haven't I?
question for you.
Yep.
Do you have a bucket list bird?
Oh, I
Somebody
tell
that
you
you'd like
what.
to see?
Oh, the Inca tern.
Oh yes. Yeah,
Tell
the
me that is
mustache.
not the coolest bird. I know. So if I had an Inca tern, I wouldn't photograph any other bird ever. It is like
Yeah,
the best looking bird in the world. Other than, I have to say it, you might have them sunbitten.
Guyana has them.
Oh, with the
Yeah,
wings
so
out.
yeah, so
Oh
my
my
friend, he's
God.
a guide in Guyana. He's been pestering me to come there for the longest while, and I have, like it's just, and it's next door basically. So
You
it's
gotta go. They are
I have
incredible.
to. So like I'm trying to go there maybe next year. Um, so yeah, that sunbitten is something that I would love to see.
Oh, when the
Yeah,
wings, I was like, that's incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, in Qatar is something that I would also really want to see. But you went to Peru, but I guess you weren't that much into birds
No,
then.
it's like a nightmare. I've
Well,
been
you
to
gotta come
Africa
back.
too when I didn't have a big lens. I was there like 20 years ago. I have slide film and oh
Oh,
my
yeah,
God,
yeah,
with
yeah. Well,
flamingos. I went to Lake Nakuru everywhere and oh my God.
uh, yeah. Just casually like 3 million flamingos. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
The wasted opportunities. I want to cry. But anyway.
But you experience it, so it's fine.
Mm-hmm. So
And
where
you
do you
can
want to
always
go?
return. Sorry?
Where did you want to go? What bird did you want to see?
I want to see all. I don't know. Like it's hard for me to choose. Yeah, but yeah, yeah, it's hard for me to choose. I would just
So
say
you've been to
anywhere.
Peru. You were going to say one about Peru. Is there a bird in Peru?
That in Katoon, and
Ah.
I've done very little birding in South America. Like I've done a little bit in Suriname, but I've been meaning to go to Guyana. And I wanted to do that a lot more, and then I got this opportunity to go to start doing trips to East Africa, which is an opportunity that I'm not going to really like pass up just like that. So that ended up being a sort of priority. But yeah,
Mm.
maybe one day we can make a trip to see some Inca tunes and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yeah, yeah. We could Burley will be happy to take us. He's because he's a bird guide
Yeah.
and he's also been to the Pantanal and he's done a lot of tours there. So
Ah,
if you ever want to go to the Pantanal, he's the guy.
yeah, and see some jaguars.
Oh yeah, he's oh my God. But it's interesting because they used to be quite rare, but I think that for whatever reason they're seeing more and more of them, which is a bit of a worry.
Yeah, I've been kind of like looking at that with narrowed eyes a little bit because I'm wondering, like what are the ethics behind this? Like how will all of a sudden how are like so many people just seeing jaguars just swimming around? Are they feeding jaguars? Are they habituating them to people? What's going on? All of a sudden we're seeing like tons of footage of jaguars hauling caiman out of the water, and that
Oh
never
yeah, I
existed.
don't know. I have no
Yeah,
idea. Yeah, I
yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. I think ecotourism, like tourism, is I think in some poorer countries it is having a positive impact in terms of it's the only thing stopping them from chopping down rainforests.
Yeah.
But in some other countries, it can be having a detrimental impact. Like Galapagos, I think it's really
Yeah.
basically like destroying it. So,
Yeah.
although I don't know much about it, so I shouldn't say anything.
No, I think in the Galapagos it's highly regulated, but it has to be highly regulated, you know. In many countries it's like, well, it's good, but it needs to be done with some level of like thought, you
Oh,
know.
did you find that in East Africa? Because what we found is like you'd be out on a safari and then they just cut across to go to a leopard
Yeah,
or something. Whereas it was
right.
really interesting, and we were a bit worried about that because you imagine like if the cars are just going anywhere all the time,
Yeah,
and then in India, it was really well regulated. So Ranthambore, where you go to see the tigers, they close off areas of the park every day. And then they
yeah,
allocate so many tourists, and you're only allowed to stay on the road.
yeah.
And they only have a certain number allowed in every area. And I was so impressed with that because I think what we saw in Africa, and this is 20 plus years ago, was a little bit worrying back then. So I don't know what it's like now.
Yeah. From my recollection, it was pretty well regulated, but at the same time, we were looking at birds too.
Oh, yeah.
So
So
like
it's
a
not
lot
really
of
that invasive. Yeah.
exactly right. But
Yeah.
also like where there were concentrations of people. So like we came upon a leopard mom and her cub, and they were just snacking, but they were like loads of vehicles just surrounding this. And from the time one like the cub gets up and walks off, you just hear engines start up and they're ready to follow and whatever. And I'm like, uh, it's totally different. Like we went and we saw some leopards, and then we there were like three cheetahs just lounging around, and um after that we moved off again to look at birds. But when you're looking at birds, like no one somehow like no one is looking at birds. They're just
No.
all about the big game. They're all about the lions. They're all about the elephants and whatever. But if like no one really goes there to look at birds, so um we were pretty much quiet and on our own for
Yeah.
most of the
Yeah.
of the time. Yeah. So
I had that in India, and in fact, the guide said today. He said we don't look at birds, only
yeah,
tigers.
yeah. No
They
birds,
kept
only
saying,
tiger.
"Stop the car! Stop the
Yeah.
car! There's a bird!" It's like,
Yeah. We were stopping for everything. We were stopping for larks. We were stopping for francolins. We were stopping for everything.
because you get excited, don't you? You see a bird and you think, I may never see this bird again in my entire life. I've got
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
what it is, you know. Oh my God, oh
I
my
know,
God.
right? Like there were these ridiculously tiny doves, and turns out
Yeah.
that they were the smallest dove in Africa. And they were
Wow.
incredibly beautiful, called Namakwa
Wow.
doves.
What are they called?
And Namakwa.
Namakwa. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
I'll
I've got a
send
thing
you.
for pigeons at the moment.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture.
Pigeon
But
lady, you're going to
yeah,
send me a picture.
yeah, they were ridiculously beautiful. You
Mm,
know,
I would love that. Oh, do you know my friend went to Malaysia and there's a tiny falcon called a falconet, and it's like
yes,
about that big.
yeah,
Oh, could you
yeah,
imagine seeing that? I'd be like,
yeah,
oh my God.
yeah. I
Yeah.
remember we were looking at the leopard, the two leopards the mama and the cub, and above them on a tree there was a pair of pygmy falcons, and they were ridiculously cute. And I'm just there
Oh
like,
my God.
leopard, falcon, leopard
Oh
or
my
falcon.
God. Oh
Yeah.
no. Oh my God. Oh,
It's
don't you hate
ridiculous,
that when everything happens at once and you're like, normally you just
right?
try and find one thing and then suddenly
Yeah,
there's,
and like for hours
you panic
nothing
and
is
you're like,
happening.
do I photograph this? Do I photograph that? Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah,
God. And it ends up being a nightmare.
yeah. Yeah, for hours nothing is happening, and you're like falling asleep on yourself, and then all of a sudden everything is happening. Like, oh
Yeah.
no, I need two of me.
That's the thing about safaris is like 5 hours of nothing and then like 10 minutes of like
Everything.
unbelievable excitement.
Yeah. Oh
And then
yeah.
it's like, not another impala. Do you hear about the naffies? Not another
No.
effing impala. They call them
Uh
naffies.
Yeah, that's when you're looking for big game. So when you're looking
Yeah,
for birds, you can be like, oh, that's a bachelor, like all the way over there, you know.
yeah,
You always getting excited, and you're always getting surprised
yeah.
by different
We're
things. You know,
easy
you
to be
find,
impressed birders. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you can see a million impalas all the time and another wildebeest and whatever, but then you find a tree and it's fruiting, and you get a whole bunch of sunbirds, a whole bunch of barbets. You
Mm.
get it's ridiculous.
God, I love barbets. They are so beautiful. Whoa.
Yeah. But
And sunbirds, but yeah. Yep.
oh yeah, all
Okay.
birds.
All right.
But yeah, but let me just
Oh,
say
stop
that.
share. I should stop share.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, everyone, thanks for coming. Seeing some people in the chat say, Ralph is saying silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking out the whole truth and acting accordingly. That's a Gandhi quote. Thank you for sharing that, Ralph. Um, but yeah, thanks guys for looking at this with us and experiencing this episode. Thank you, Georgina, for joining us, and thank you everyone everywhere who's watching, and everyone who appreciates birds. So I hope to see you all in a month for the next episode. Remember to join us at learnthebirds.com so you wouldn't miss a beat. And yeah, so take care, everyone. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks to Georgina. And remember that bird is definitely the word. Okay.
Amen.
So yeah, amen.